Good day, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world. And yeah, I'm sorry. It's pouring down with rain. It's a very, very wet Easter here in Brisbane. But we have like moments now where it quietens down and it gets really heavy. Now, from time to time, you get emails which really are pivotal emails that just bring everything into focus. And on this Easter Saturday, which it is here in Brisbane, and it'll be your Easter Saturday as well. It'll be about 4 o'clock in the morning your time, I guess, or 6 o'clock in the morning your time. I have received an email from Marshall, and I'm not going to reveal his surname, but I am going to put a link to the PDF that I'm going to talk about. Now, Marshall wrote to me, and thanks, Marshall. Here's a huge shout out to you, buddy. You know, we've been talking about perspectives in the last couple of days, about that African perspective where he talked about confusion, and my God, I don't think anyone understood what he was talking about. And then you had that incredible insight from that white lady who just hit the nail on the head. You know, there's a clear disparity in the understanding and the logic. And this is not a racist thing. And Marshall is a researcher and a scientist. And what he's provided here is quite extraordinary. Now, me, by reciting it, I'll probably be called a racist. It is what it is. All I'm doing is I'm presenting the facts that scientists have extracted when it comes to IQs. And it confirms what we said earlier on this channel. It is absolutely confirms that. Okay, Marshall writes, Dear Scott, as I mentioned in my communications, I have been involved in serious study for some years into the cause of Africa's failure. I have applied my sound scientific background to this end, and current respected scientific journals reveal an abundance of data which sheds light on the plight of South Africa and Africa. This data is a death knell to postmodernist egalitarianism, which accounts for the hysterical, groundless, and often violent opposition these research groups face. So, if you're a researcher looking at IQs based on race, you are immediately a racist because you are actually presenting the truth. That's what he's saying here. And he says, I attach a very brief summary of the current literature's findings and interpreted its relevance to the very dire situation Mr. de Klerk's egalitarian model had predictably led South Africa. If there is to be any salvation or mitigation of the damage in South Africa, it can only occur if this information can be understood by a significant number of South Africans. The calculations of the SA demographics is my own work. The numbers give an idea of how serious the situation in fact is. If you find my research as merit, please publish it. For security reasons, I would rather my name was not mentioned. You got it, buddy. The most dangerous phenomena currently in South Africa are, I believe, the scapegoating of white and increasingly Indian people in South Africa, and the fact that white South Africans have not realized that a unitary, multiracial state simply cannot exist in any civilized form in South Africa. It is, in my opinion, of critical importance that white, coloured, and Indian South Africans must realize that although the Rainbow Nation was an attractive fantasy, it simply cannot be a reality. If the three groups cannot soon be convinced to abandon the dangerous postmodernistic fantasy altogether and prepare for succession, catastrophe will be inevitable. Our liberal press constantly misinterprets South Africa's woes as being due to a problem with the politicians. The real problem is not the politicians, it's the electorate. The only way to tackle this is succession. I've formulated various strategies to deal with these two pressing problems. If you care to discuss them with me, It may take a good sequel to the data I present. And he says, kind regards, Marshall. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just read from the PDF that he sent me. Let me just grab that. Give me a second here. This is fascinating stuff. I mean, this is what I love about the channel that I run. I'm getting some really excellent information, and this completely confirms what, as I said earlier, what we've been talking about. Okay, in the PDF that I will link below, and I'm going to quote from it, this is the results of his research as a scientist, and it's fascinating. Preamble. Revolutionary scientific revelations may prompt fierce resistance from those rooted in the bigotry or past false doctrines. The modern scientific evaluation into cognitive ability, or CA, has a remarkable similarity to the revelation of heliocentrism. The modern-day equivalent of Copernicus would be Professor Arthur Jensen of the University of California, Berkeley, and Professor William Shockley, the celebrated Nobel Prize-winning physicist from MIT and Stanford University, who laid the foundation for modern cognitive ability research. Galilei and Giordano Bruno were persecuted, in the case of Bruno, burned at the stake by the Bain mob, screaming heretic for advancing the heliocentric theory. Professor Richard Herrnstein of Harvard University and Dr. Charles Murray of the American Enterprise Institute were likewise viciously and unjustly attacked with screams of racist by the ignorant egalitarian dogmatists. The hysterical stigmatization of eminent scientists investigating the heritable nature of CA, or cognitive ability, and the significant racial difference in CA has died down considerably as more and more scientific teams independently validate the scientific findings of these pioneers. At present, there are a gratifying number of research centers elucidating the nature of CA. There are still numerous unanswered questions, but there are certain facts which are accepted by leading psychometricians to have been proven beyond reasonable doubt. I shall most briefly summarize these accepted facts. Some minor caveats are omitted for brevity. Fact number 1. Cognitive ability, CA, is overwhelmingly determined by genetic inheritance. Get that? Cognitive ability, it's kind of like logic, is overwhelmingly determined by genetic inheritance. Certain catastrophic environmental factors, i.e. brain trauma, may reduce CA dramatically. Efforts to increase CA by environmental manipulation have been singularly unrewarding. Fact 2. The most reliable predictor by far of academic, economic, and social success of an individual in a technological society, high Pearson correlation coefficient, is the individual's high G-factor IQ score. Fact 3. The capability of individuals to perform successfully in specified roles and occupations is determined by their CA, their cognitive ability. University professors in mathematics and science at reputable institutions usually have IQs greater than 140. The average IQ of the student body at Harvard University is presently 140. The levels of requirement, CA, have been determined with respect to many professionals. As an example, the following professions generally require the IQ ranges indicated. And then he gives profession and the IQ range. And I'll just read them out to you. Engineer, research analyst, executive, IQ range 116 to 130. Sales manager, teacher, general manager 110 to 115. Bookkeeper, credit clerk, nurse, lab technician 103 to 109 IQ. Police officer, receptionist, cashier, IQ of 100 to 102. Of note is a rule in the American Armed Forces which prohibits the employment of job applicants with an IQ under 84. These individuals are regarded as unemployable. This is an alarming fact when viewed in terms of South African demographics, which we'll come to shortly. Fact 4. High G-factor IQ tests have been shown to be an excellent measure of cognitive ability, or CA. Modern IQ tests are well engineered to effectively eliminate linguistic, social, cultural, racial, and educational bias. Fact 5. If one stratifies East Asians, Caucasians, and blacks in North America in IQ ranges, i.e. 100 to 109, 110 to 119, etc., then there is no significant difference in the economic, social, or scholastic performance for individuals within each range. This finding is of extreme significance. Fact 6. The mean CA of different ethnic groups differs significantly. The research results are very reproducible by independent scientific groups. Group: Ashkenazim Jews, 110 IQ with verbal bias. That's their average. Huge. East Asians, Chinese, Japanese, Koreans, 107 with non-verbal bias. Caucasians, 100 IQ. Ethiopian Jews, 69 IQ. South African blacks, 69 IQ. Okay, that's about almost it's about 70% of the IQ of the Caucasian population in South Africa, the African blacks. And well below that figure that you've got to have with an IQ to actually join the army in the US. The standard deviation of IQ distribution is 15 points, which, coupled with the above facts, yields extremely concerning data when applied to South African demographics. The following table indicates the percentage and gross numbers of individuals in each IQ segment in South Africa. Now, I'm not going to read all this crap out. You can download the PDF and read it for yourself. There's a lot of stuff in here. This is now really the nitty-gritty of what we're talking about here. The shocking implications of this data for the South African situation. Economic prosperity across racial groups for all in South Africa is a total impossibility. Equivalent academic performance across the racial groups is likewise unattainable. Disappointment and misplaced racist scapegoating are inevitable. Economic failure among black South Africans must culminate in illicit property dispossession, which is what they're trying to do right now. So-called BEE will drastically reduce economic efficiency of the whole economy. And we're seeing that. You know, you can see what's happening in South Africa. You've got idiots running the country. That's basically what it is. Of interest is the massive number of black South Africans with IQ scores below 80, over 33 million, or 75% of that population. These people are regarded as unemployable for all but the most menial tasks. The development of robotics will greatly compromise their economic viability in a technological society. Likewise, of great concern is the significant absence of black South Africans with IQ above 130, less than 1,500 compared to over 100,000 white South Africans. This group are the leaders of commerce and the sciences. Black South Africans' performance in commerce, government, commercial farming, and academia reflect this severe deficit. You have to look no further at what's happening at the universities in South Africa today when they've got black leadership. It's just going totally cactus. White South Africans are blamed on a daily basis for this disparity. The term previously disadvantaged is in fact a dangerous anti-Caucasian racist term constituting hate speech. It implies that Caucasian South Africans are responsible for the poor economic and educational performance of blacks. Science disproves these vile allegations. The correct term is cognitively disadvantaged. The problem is genetic. It is not of Caucasian making. White South Africans are also accused of the absurd and illogical crime of stealing black land. This frequent claim is that blacks would prosper if they had land and businesses. Every farm given to black management has failed. Now, I've got to tell you something, because I actually know quite a bit about what he's just said there, and he is so on the money. Back in the middle to late 1970s, when the homelands were set up, and what was then East Griqualand became the Transkei, an independent homeland. And someone I knew very well was the Strachan family, and in particular Ken Strachan, who was the managing director of something like 23 stores right across the whole of Transkei. Very, very, very successful trading stores. And what happened with the homeland policy, the South African government bought him out, and they basically gave those stores, working beautifully, to 23 different well-connected black Africans who then ran and owned the stores. Within a year, they were all bankrupt. Every single one of those stores was bankrupt. And the same applies with farming. Look what they do with farming. I have seen so many examples of farms that have been beautifully run farms that have been handed over to blacks, and they just run into the ground. Look at that story with that member of parliament that I just posted yesterday. You know, all those animals that she just allowed to die. These guys couldn't run a bloody birthday party. I mean, let alone a store or the country. They really have no clue. That's the bottom line. They don't know what they are doing. Okay, let's get back to this article. Our higher education institutes are flooded with black candidates who cannot hope to succeed scholastically due to their inappropriate cognitive ability, or CA. In a recent study at Wits University by Professor Philippe Rushton of University of Western Ontario, 150 blacks and 150 white students in psychology were IQ tested. Now, I actually put a video up about that a few months ago. And now he's talking about this particular test. The average IQ of this elite group of black students was 84. The average IQ in a similar class at Toronto University is well over 120. Poor results, of course, are blamed on white people and apartheid. The facts refute these hateful allegations. Free higher education will compound this problem and destroy our universities. And then he says as a prologue, Einstein remarked words to the effect that the height of lunacy is to repeat the same process over and over again and expect a different result. The fourth eglotopian process has been repeated over and over from Congo to Kenya, from Nigeria to Zimbabwe. Does any intelligent person expect a different result in South Africa? That's the elephant in the room. Don't forget, Sunday night, 8 p.m., we're selling that T-shirt at the auction. I'll put the link down below. The time has come for some very serious discussion at a high level. South Africa is well advanced in the vicious circle which engulfs and destroys all non-homogeneous societies with a majority segment of the population which is cognitively challenged. The phases of this process are as follows. The euphoric phase. The Egalo-utopians celebrate the equal prosperity they believe that will result from an egalitarian system. The past system they wrongfully blame for their underperformance is abolished. 2. The reality phase. Economic and academic inequalities of outcomes persist, despite equal treatment, because the real cause of inequality persists. 3. The egalo-coercive phase. Once this phase has begun, an accelerating vicious circle into a downward spiral begins. This phase starts with economic handicapping of the cognitively advanced sector and irresponsible promotion of the cognitively challenged segment. Now, we call that BEE. Continuing. Economic failure and gross inefficiencies result, as advanced by SOE and government department implosion. The next progression is scapegoating, beginning with less racist forms, i.e. scapegoating the education system. Handicapping expands into the academic field. This too yields no equal outcomes. Scapegoating now becomes blatantly racist, and inefficiencies and failures in the economy and academia lead to the final phase. Reluctance to invest in this unstable climate will exponentially accelerate the overall economic decline. The echo chamber effect of organizations like the NG Church and the liberal press repeatedly focusing the blame for underperformance on the white population is a major incendiary force. And he closes off with point 4, where he says, asset seizures and mass violence phase. South Africa is entering this final phase. It will begin with white targeting, then the Indian population, and finally the colored population. Violence will accelerate dramatically due to accelerated racial scapegoating and resistance of those whose assets are seized, as well as a general economic implosion and resultant impoverishment, heightening misplaced resentment. Now, everything there makes complete logical sense to me, and that's why I'm publishing this. As I say, I will link to the PDF so you can read it and assess it yourself, but before I close off this video, I want you to have a look at 3 images that the scientist has sent me, and they just confirm everything he says. And if anyone can scientifically refute what are in those images or what's in the PDF I have attached, I would love to hear from you. The comment section is below. Send me a link showing that what he says is wrong. And I'm not being racist, I'm being real. This is the issue in South Africa. You've got a group of people who are incompetent to run the country. And it's not because of the color of the skin. It's just that the cognitive ability is not there. And this is scientifically proven. All right, guys, please remember to subscribe to be kept informed, and have a great day. Bye for now.